She was the most famous woman on earth, from fairy tale bride to estranged royal wife and divorced mother. Diana captivated hearts and headlines, but behind the public facade of royal duty was a hidden secret life of marital betrayal. Between Diana's spectacular wedding and her televised revelations of adultery lay as a gulf turmoil and court rivalry at the center of it all was one woman, Camilla Parker Bowles. Charles found his young wife very different from the worldly women he had known before her. Actress Susan George was one, Zoe's alas was another. There was Lady Tran, wife of a close friend. Shielzo claimed an affair with Charles' divorce. Jane Ward was a girl he could date but not marry. Diana seemed perfect but proved vengeful, capable of performing her royal duties while plotting to undermine her husband. The aristocratic Diana had grown into a boiling teenager by her engagement in 1981. She linked her Spencer dynasty to the royal house of Windsor, but by the time of her father's death, 11 years later, her marriage had entered its terminal phase. Charles's enduring love for Camilla and Diana's consequent affairs tore apart the royal couple. Their misery was evident on their last tour together in Korea in 1992. The last banquet, the final tutors abroad for the couple, who were once the great hope of the British monarchy. They lived separate lives. Diana took comfort from other men, including a bodyguard. Just 5 years after her dream wedding, she had a long affair with a cavalry officer. The only adulterous relationship she ever admitted in public. There was an intense closeness with an old friend. A private phone call was secretly taped and became known as Quidgate. She was linked to a famous rugby player and blamed for the end of his marriage. She fell in love with a married art dealer and played his home with hundreds of silent phone calls after her divorce, as she wanted to marry a heart surgeon. And finally, there was a summer romance with a playboy, which ended with their tragic deaths despite her affairs. This is the Diana people prefer to remember, the Princess of Wales, a woman with inimitable style and charm. She was the jewel in the crown, one of the royal family's greatest assets. After her marriage failed, Diana looked for different directions in her life. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm immensely proud to be here in New York tonight with you. She became an international campaigner against landmines. She visited countries on behalf of major charities. She still had to attend official functions, but as a semi-detached royal, her lacked definition. Diana decided to use her fame to help the world's disadvantaged and afflicted. In December 1995 in New York, she won the Humanitarian of the Year award for her charity work. In the same month, the Queen wrote to Diana recommending divorce in the United States. Diana found the warmth and acceptance she felt lacking in the royal court, which dead with Charles. This was not the way she imagined her life would become when she and Charles faced the press on their engagement day. Diana later said, at the age of 19, you always think you're prepared for everything, and you think you have knowledge of what's coming ahead. She scarcely understood Charles's complex personality. He was a Cambridge graduate. She left school at 16. He'd had torrid romances, some with married women. She had no previous lovers. Charles was 12 years her senior. Diana was almost a child. This nearly mirrored the age gap between Diana's parents. When they married, her father was 30, her mother just 18. Diana's mother, Francine, here with baby. Diana shocked society by leaving home and family for another man. Think that Diana's mother could be described as shot-headed and strong-willed, and indeed she proved that really by running off with the second husband, Peter Shank. At a time when this was very unusual behavior. You might have mistresses, lovers at sea, but you stuck with the family and stuck together. A bitter divorce and a child custody battle left Diana, her sisters, and brother with their father, a former equity to the Queen. Her sister Jane's marriage to the Queen's assistant private secretary kept them close to the royal court bridesmaid. Diana had an idealized vision of her own futures. She was brought up. She was very unsophisticated even for her age in those days, and I mean, that's just the ideal she lived with. She said to lots of people, I'm going to get married and have lots of children, and we'll always be together. Diana, who failed her school exams, became a kindergarten assistant in London. She met Charles, then dating her sisters. Ara had the family's ancestral home, Old Thorpe, sort of messing with Phil's lie. Till I previous to that, but ik knew what did you think? Then what was your instant impression, both of you? What did you learn about it? Well, I remember thinking what average, jolly and amusing and an attractive 16-year-old she was, and I mean great fun and bouncy and full of life and everything. And no know what you thought of me, pretty amazing. The press chased Diana during her brief courtship with Charles. They were convinced that at last he had found his future bride. Very few previous girls had been serious contenders. Davina Sheffield was presumed Sue. Etable, but their romance with Charles ended when a past affair was revealed. Respectable Jane Wellesley, a duke's daughter, was an early favorite with a bachelor prince. After he left university, he was very uptight, but was very worried about getting caught with his trousers down. And those days she was very dutiful about doing all the right things, being the Prince of Wales, not in besmirching the family reputation in any way. And so he's highly nervous about even approaching girls, so it had to be the other way around, and any woman who could actually grab him by the scruff off the neck and drag him into the bedroom was going to whine every time. Charles had a select circle of friends who also enjoyed his favorite sports, hunting, skiing, and polo. It was through polo that Charles met the woman who would dominate his life. She was then dating one of his closest friends. Camilla Shand was from the county set, not noble enough to marry a prince in the early 70s, but discreet enough to be a lover. She had a nearthiness she found irresistible. The polo fields around Winds, or were just filled with these girls who were absolutely desperate to get into bed with Prince Charles, but the only people that Harley looked at were the girls who were a bit unusual, and certainly Camilla was one of those. And she turned up wearing a pair of jeans held up with a safety pin, and her hair was all over the place. And there was that magnetic attraction. The duty intervened, and Charles's naval career beckoned after a brief and heady affair. He left Camilla for the high seas. With Charles gone, here zoomed her longtime romance with Army officer and Rue Parker Bowles, marrying him in 1973. He was a savory, attractive man regarded in high society as a good catch, and Rue Parker Bowles was supposed to be the best lay in London, and she had been trying to grab him for years and years. In fact, by the time that Prince Charles bumped into Camilla, she'd been going out on and off with Andrew Parker Bowles for 6 years. She was 6 years of a 7-year campaign into trying to get Rue Parker Bowles up the aisles. She knew she could never marry Prince Charles because she wasn't a virgin. She was not sufficiently aristocratic enough, and she knew jolly well that the courtiers who were looking for a wife of Prince Charles wanted somebody whose face could goon a postage stamp, and hers was no photographic portrait. Knowing Charles had to marry Camilla championed the innocent Diana, hoping she wouldn't threaten their relationship. The engagement interview shows the difference in Charles and Diana's feelings, and I'm amazed that she's been brave enough to take me on, and is supposed in love, of course. Whatever in love, Charles loved 2 women. Diana was besotted with him alone. The royal road show began while they were engaged. Nervous Diana soon established an easy rapport, especially with children. Her first mistake was a choice of dress. She wore a strapless low-cut gown to accompany Charles to a music recital at the Goldsmiths' Hall, London. The dress was considered too daring and the wrong color. She said later, "I hadn't appreciated that I was now seen as royalty. Black to me was the smartest color you could possibly have at the age of 19. It was Ariel grown-up dress. Camera angles made the dress to revealing it was fit for a film star, but not a future queen. She should have been given advice beforehand. Because actually, it's a well-known royal principle that you don't wear black except in mourning, so that's the one she shouldn't have done. And number 2, of course, the frock was a disaster. When you think that the photographers were all going to be paring down her décolletage, and that was something that was picked at the last moment. You think Princess Grace of Monaco was a guest of honors," she jokingly warned the nervous Diana. "Don't worry, dear. It'll get a lot worse." Diana would receive little help from her husband's family. Princess Margaret liked her very much, and did help her, and did show her things like, where to put your handbag, how to get out, that sort of practical thing. But a month whole, she was just expected to get on with it. The months before the royal wedding were fraught with tension. Diana grew jealous of Camilla and uncertain about her own role as the Princess of Wales. This was one of Diana's problems, that nobody rushed forward to help her nobodies. Ahmed really thought out a role for her, beyond walking up the aisle at St. Paul's Cathedral. The Spencers were a proud and noble dynasty, more English and aristocratic than the Germanic House of Windsor. Diana's mother had tried to warn her about marrying Charles's royal position. Rather than the many, you could say that her family was certainly more English or British in the Windsors. And I think in a way the family would have looked themselves as more aristocratic, and possibly I think this has been down the ages aristocratic view of the Windsors, that they're they're middle class. Diana said at their wedding, "I had such hopes in my heart," but just days beforehand she'd almost called it off because of her fears over Camilla. And walking down the aisle of St. Paul's Cathedral, Diana had spotted her rival among the congregation. Camilla would become the 3rd person in the marriage swept along by the occasion. Diana hoped that Camilla belonged to the past, but as the royal couple left for their honeymoon, there was another reminder of Charles's mistress. Leading the official escort group was Camilla's husband, cavalry officer, and Rue Parker Bowles, a longtime friend of Charles's sister, Princess Anne. He remained part of the gilded circle at the royal court years later. People would joke that Andrew laid down his wife for his country by ignoring her affair with Charles. He knew that the best she could be was Prince Charles's mistress, but she was determined when she got Charles into bed that she would remain Prince Charles's mistress. She saw that she could do that, and have Rue at the same time get married to, and Rue have Rue's children, and still be the Prince of Wales's #1 mistress on honeymoon aboard the royal yacht Britannia. Diana discovered the hold Camilla had over her bridegroom. Charles had kept photographs of Camilla and a gift of cufflinks, engraved with their initials. The newlyweds left Britannia and went to Scotland. Diana's hopes were dashed, and she no longer trusted her husband. Diana was deeply suspicious about Charles and Camilla. She couldn't always tell when they were together, but she could sense it. He had extrasensory perceptions. She was a remarkable woman in that way, and a hiddo. Nat believed that she knew that the night before the royal wedding, that Charles and Camilla were together in bed in Buckingham Palace after the ball, but she could sense it. He knew that they were still talking. The evidence that Camilla knew what Dinah's movements were, and she, I think, could only live in the hope that once she actually got her husband away on honeymoon, that everything would change. She really believed that somehow the act of love going to bed together would somehow change Charles and allow him to forget about Camilla and concentrate on Jan, his wife, posing for the press at the Queen's estate ball. Moral: they successfully hid the truth. Diana had already succumbed to an eating disorder, bulimia, which she blamed on the specter of Camilla. Diana and Charles were already finding it difficult to relate to each other. Most of all, she could not compete with the older and more experienced Camilla. I think that it was very hard for her. Don't think that sexual things were her main attraction. I'm not sure. That she was very, very sexy, really a softened, very beautiful women, or they are not terrific on the sexual front. And I think that that's the strength of Camilla, which that's the sort of aura she has, a sort of sexual power. And so from that point of view, Diana didn't stand much of a chance. The births of William and Harry did not create the happy family unit Diana had craved when they holidayed with the Spanish royal family in Major Cane 1986. Diana was secretly ill with bulimia. Charles left early and returned to Camilla. Diana wanted a little girl to complete her family, but after Harry's birth, the marriage was effectively over. I think she terribly wanted a daughter, and there was no way it was going to happen. It don't mean instead of Harry, but she wanted a daughter after the sons, and it was so bad then it wasn't going to happen. For a while there was an uneasy truce. Charles kept Camilla and Diana hid her affairs. While putting on a show of support for her husband in 1990, Charles broke his arm while playing polo. Charles sustained an arm injury that failed to heal properly, requiring it to be reset. Diana, ever the dutiful wife in public, collected him from the hospital. However, once they left the public eye, they went their separate ways. This incident marked a point when the fractures in their relationship became increasingly apparent. Observers remarked on the coolness between the couple, which was hard to ignore by the time Prince Harry was born. Rumors of their strained relationship began to swirl, with the press closely monitoring their time apart. Amidst the barrage of media speculation, Charles and Diana were compelled to make public appearances together to maintain a semblance of unity. Behind closed doors, however, tensions festered. Diana was suspected of leaking stories to the press, a move some attributed to her growing desperation. When her marriage started falling apart, Diana realized she had no voice in the matter, a royal insider later said. Determined to make herself heard, she used the media as her platform. Diana's charm and charisma worked in her favor. Despite the turmoil, her radiant beauty and compassionate demeanor captured hearts worldwide. In the early years, we were a great team, Diana once reflected, though those harmonious days seemed like a distant memory as personal struggles overshadowed their public roles. Her growing prominence only added to the strain, with both admiration and controversy following her every move. The cracks in the royal marriage were no longer secrets hidden behind palace walls. They were now playing out on a global stage.